Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Leading Through Menopause, Strategies for Success. My name is Dr. Jennifer Zelovitzky. At Medcan, I lead the Perimenopause and Menopause program, and I'm so proud to be a part of empowering women to live their best life through the menopause transition. I'm pleased to say that our program is a 6-month intensive multidisciplinary program that helps you not only in terms of managing your medical needs with nursing and physician support, non-hormonal and hormonal options for treatment, but also in providing advice about pelvic health, nutritional support, getting you started on the right exercise program, and helping you to feel your absolute best self and to thrive during the menopause transition. Please reach out to Medcan if you would like more information about joining our program. And now, sit back and enjoy today's webinar.
Welcome to Medcan's webinar, Leading Through Menopause, Strategies for Success. I'm Jasmine. I'm the producer of Medcan's Eat, Move, Think podcast. I would like to invite you all to participate in the first poll right now. Coming into this webinar, how knowledgeable do you feel about menopause on a scale from 1 to 5? 1 being the least knowledgeable and 5 being the most.
All right. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you to our amazing panelists and to everyone attending today. I am Jennifer Zelovitzky. I'm the clinical director of women's health here at Medcan, and I am also the clinical lead and the physician running the Perimenopause and Menopause program, which has been up and running for about a year now. I'm very proud of it. I would like to think we've helped a whole lot of women navigate this time in their lives. And I'm hoping that today will empower all of you to have a better understanding of this transition in our lives. That should not be the debilitating time that it is, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think we're all aware that there is a significant stigma that surrounds the menopause transition. As a result of this stigma, researchers, physicians, and even society have largely shied away from it. They've really neglected this issue. And in fact, I was reading a brand new poll by the McKinsey Health Institute that indicated that even to this day, in the US, the National Institute of Health dedicates only 11% of their funding towards women's health initiatives and research. And in Canada, it's even more dismal. It's less than 6% of all funding goes towards women's health initiatives. So this is really, really helping to continue and perpetuate this cycle of stigma and lack of knowledge. And, one of my patients who may be here today, I think, said to me the other day something that really struck a chord with me. She said, seeking care for menopause in Canada right now is a little bit like the Underground Railroad. A lot of physicians are not trained in it. They don't offer care. They don't offer solutions. And as a result, women are left to their own devices to seek care in alternative ways. And they often end up seeing, rather unscrupulous providers who offer care that isn't evidence-based or in some cases is quite harmful. But really, women are left with no choice. And I certainly never fault anyone for trying to advocate for themselves and trying to get control of their symptoms. After all, less than 15% of women over 40 are actually receiving any sort of care or treatment for their hormone-related symptoms or their menopause-related symptoms. And this is unacceptable. As physicians, we have failed our patients. And as a result, I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about this today, but 1 in 10 women is leaving the workforce as a result of their untreated menopause symptoms. So I'm hoping today is one step in trying to turn that tide. And so before we continue on with section 1 of our program, we're going to actually do another poll.
When does menopause officially start? When you miss your first period after age 40, when you've gone 12 full months without a period, or when you've had symptoms like hot flashes or missed periods for 3 months.
So I hope everyone had a chance to answer that question. I want to provide the answer right away because, again, we don't want to hide in the shadows. We want everybody to be aware and be on the same page in terms of definitions. So menopause is, in fact, when you have gone a full calendar year without a menstrual period. It's actually a moment in time, which a lot of women, that's a misconception that we have too. Perimenopause is often what women talk about when they refer to menopause in terms of their symptoms. And this can start several years, up to 10 years before the final menstrual period, and can often continue for many, many years or even decades after the final period. And so it's really the symptoms that we're targeting, whereas the menopause itself is just a moment in time. And so I really want to now turn things over to our wonderful panelists who will introduce themselves more formally to you. But I also want to ask them about what their perspective is on the impact of menopause on women in today's day and age. And so my first panelist I'll turn to is Janet Coe, who is the founder and president of the Menopause Foundation of Canada. They do tremendous work in raising awareness and researching the impact of menopause on women and in the workplace. And so, Janet, what can you share about the impact that menopause is having on working women and on Canadian workplaces in general?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. In 2023, the Menopause Foundation of Canada, which is a national nonprofit advocacy organization dedicated to breaking the stigma of menopause, we released a report called Menopause in Working Canada. And what we found was this staggering $3.5 billion economic impact of the unmanaged symptoms of menopause in our country. And that breaks out into 540,000 missed days of work, lost productivity. And one of the statistics that was very sad, but very real for many women, is the reality that in their peak earning years, when women should be earning the most, many, because of these unmanaged symptoms, are reducing their hours, going part-time, or stepping away altogether, resulting in $3.3 billion of lost income to women on an annual basis. So employers really need to understand that menopause intersects with this critical career stage happening between the ages of 45 and 55, when women are assuming more leadership roles. And we have to recognize that menopause is having an impact on women. 1 in 2 women are not prepared for this stage of life. Most women do not understand the symptoms that could be happening to them. And we need to recognize that symptoms do not limit themselves to off work hours. So this is a real issue and a real opportunity for us to support women in their prime. And employers, I think, are just embracing this reality.
That's a great point that you make. It does not limit itself to off work hours. This is absolutely impacting women in every aspect of their lives. I'd like to now introduce Salima Valji. Salima is the founder, the CEO, and the head coach of Unleash Forward. She's a sought-after speaker, a coach, and thought leader, and she frequently speaks up on topics such as advancing women of color and leadership and diversity. Salima, why don't you tell us a little more about your work and your perspective on menopause, how it's affecting women in the workplace?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. So in my organization, we're on a mission to get more diverse voices and hearing a lot about how menopause is showing up. And even in my own experience as CEO, I like to say, I'm learning to tango with menopause. Sometimes we're stepping on each other's feet and sometimes we're gliding. And right now, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, I would say we're stepping on each other's toes. And so, it's exactly what Janet said that really resonated for me, is that, menopause will show up at any time. And, it shows up in forms of our experience of work and our understanding of ourselves. And I can talk more about what those actual symptoms are later on, and what I'm observing in my practice.
Yes, it's very interesting. I attended a talk recently with one of the practitioners at Mount Sinai Hospital, a menopause certified specialist, and she indicated that they've done some digging into their patient population. And despite the fact they're an OHIP covered service, they're available to anyone with a physician's referral, 90% of the patients they see are still Caucasian women. And they are wondering what this is. There's something other than a barrier to care. Maybe there is more of a stigma, maybe, a lack of understanding or miscommunication, or women are told so often, this is just part of life. Your mother dealt with it, your grandmother dealt with it, just sort of suck it up. And the other aspect we have to consider is that we know from research that symptoms are often more severe and long-lasting in women of color. We have a lot more work to do in terms of access and equity, and even just education, letting women know that, menopause is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. That's really got to be our through line here. So thank you so much, both of you, for the work that you're doing. So now I want to do a little bit of myth busting. Okay, and I know we've all brought some myths with us today, and I'm sure we've all heard a lot of the myths that go on. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to dispel one of my top myths, which is the harms, the risks of hormone therapy, menopause hormone therapy, and the notion that it's causing more harm than good. But just before I do that, we have one more quick poll before I dispel the myth to see where we stand at our baseline level of understanding about hormone therapy. Okay, well, that's great. I know that's why most of us are here today, is because we get a lot of conflicting information out there, especially on the internet or from other providers, because as I said, family doctors don't often know. And rather than saying, I don't know, they will often tell you what they learned back 20 years ago in medical school. And we know now that a lot of that information is outdated and has been largely over-exaggerated. So let's talk about the number one myth about hormone therapy that I hear, which is that it causes breast cancer. So I want to explain very quickly where this came from, where the origin of this is, and how I like to explain this to my patients. So there was this big study 20 years ago, the Women's Health Initiative, and many of you have heard about it, you've read about it. This is a huge study of 27,000 plus women. The average age of patient was 63, and they were actually starting women up to age 79 on oral hormone therapy for the very first time, because their goal was to see if it actually prevented things like heart attacks, strokes, and breast cancer. And so they stopped the study after 5 years because they saw a very small, not statistically significant increase in the rates of breast cancer diagnosis. So when I say small, I mean instead of what they expected, which was 1 in 1,000 women per year being diagnosed with breast cancer, they saw 3 in 1,000 women per year being diagnosed with breast cancer. So were the headlines correct when they said HRT triples the risk of breast cancer? Yes. However, they were not talking about the absolute risks. And as a result, rates of hormone therapy use fell from over 40% to less than 5%. And doctors flat out refused to give women even the option of taking hormone therapy for their debilitating and life-altering symptoms. We now know from 20 years of follow-up that not only did breast cancer rates not decline after everybody was taken off of HRT, but we now know also that estrogen in and of itself was not contributing. It was the group getting estrogen plus progesterone, which is a little bit of a puzzle that people still have to sort out. But also, there was no increased risk of death from breast cancer among the women who were on hormone therapy. So the question remains, were these breast cancer cases picked up because the women were being monitored more closely because they were part of a clinical trial? Or was there actually a cause and effect? But the bottom line is the absolute risks were so small that in my mind, it's criminal that women were not even given the option to accept those risks for themselves and to choose a therapy that could be quite helpful to them in terms of getting their life back. Because I know all of us on the panel, we've all seen what the impact of these symptoms can be. As you mentioned, Salima, quite rightly, this is a tango at times, and we are just trying to dance with someone stepping on our feet. What I practice is, a more holistic and individualized approach to care. Yes, I do use hormone therapy. I also use non-hormone therapy. I also use some lifestyle interventions. It really does take a multifaceted approach to get these symptoms under control. But what I don't want is women to write off the potential life-improving and beneficial aspects of menopause hormone therapy because they have been very much overstated by the media. Let's turn it over to Janet. What's your myth or two that you'd like to dispel for us today?
Just want to thank you first, Jennifer, for trying to dispel that myth, because what we hear from women all the time is a lot of fear. They are afraid of the gold standard treatment, which has been studied for decades. And it's really important that we approach this conversation empowered with knowledge and evidence-based information. And that's what we really want women to have. We should not be afraid of treatments that can really help us and benefit us and improve our lives. The other myths, and there's so many, as you know, but I think one of the biggest ones is this notion that Menopause marks this period of decline that you're past your best before date. The reality is menopause is this wonderful experience. It should be celebrated as a milestone. Women are entering our own. It marks like a period of creativity, wisdom, experience, and we need to start reflecting that and changing the narrative on menopause. The reality, however, is also that if you are struggling with symptoms, you don't feel particularly great. So the second myth that we have to get around is that there's nothing you can do about this, that menopause is natural. As you said earlier, yes, this is a natural phase of life, but suffering is not essential to that. And there are so many options available to us, lifestyle changes, preventative care, and including safe and effective treatment options. I think we do women a tremendous disservice when we look at menopause as just being about the end of our reproductive lives. This marks a profound hormonal shift that affects our entire bodies. And we now know through research that it's a neurological change, that our brains are being rewired. I mean, it's really remarkable. So we have to stop thinking about this as the end of our reproductive life. We also have to stop, the other myth is that you get through it and it's done. I've been through menopause. Menopause is a stage of life, a very active stage of life. And women don't understand that once you reach menopause, 40% of women will still have hot flashes into their 60s, some into their 70s and 80s. Women don't understand that you're at increased risk for osteoporosis, for heart disease, and for the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which most people have never heard of. So there are so many myths that we have to break because knowledge is power. The more we understand this phase of life, the better prepared we will be to really thrive and live our best life, because it's wonderful. I don't think there's anybody at this stage who wants to be 30 again. We just want to feel healthy and vibrant, and we can do that.
That is so well said. Thank you. I agree. And we live 3 decades or more after we go through the menopause transition. Our life is not over. I am with you here. I'm in that period of time myself, and my life is in so many ways just beginning. My children are grown up, and I have more freedom now, and I have a lot more creativity and a lot more ideas, percolating in my mind of what I want to do with those next 3 decades. So you're right. There's no reason why we have to slow down or be seen as something that needs to be put to the side now that our utility in society is over. That we're going to get rid, our generation's going to get rid of that old myth. Salima, what is your myth that you'd like to bust for us today?
Well, before I do that, I just wanted to kind of jump in and share that I remember when I found out when my estrogen levels had dropped, it was my birthday, and I was crying and I was upset and I didn't understand what was going on. And later on, I had discovered that the Japanese word for the closest word to menopause is konenki, which means renewal or energy. And I thought, oh, what a powerful reframe to reclaim that. And it's exactly what you said, Janet, which is this is an opportunity to reinvent yourself, to reclaim yourself. And so I wanted to share that word with everybody who's listening today, because I think it's such a, it is a moment of celebration. And that's what exactly they do in the Japanese culture. They have konenki parties, which I want to find an invite to because I would love to attend one. So I just wanted to share that with our listeners today.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the myth that I wanted to bust is really around staying silent is the best strategy. And building on this fear that you talked about, Janet, there's also a fear that translates from the healthcare into the workplace. And I remember, last year I was on a leadership panel for women in front of an audience of thousands of women. And there was a question about menopause from the audience. And my 2 other panelists weren't comfortable answering that question, didn't have the language, were nervous. What can we talk about? What am I allowed to talk about from a work perspective? And so I really find that women are struggling in terms of how to share. Oftentimes women will tell me that they just don't trust that they can share this information without being penalized in some way. And that really breaks my heart, because the more that we're silent about this, the more we're giving power to the stigma, and we're not getting the support that we need. And the second thing is like hiding your symptoms and trying to do your work while managing your symptoms. It's a double whammy. So there's a huge cost to you physically and emotionally, and it can also impact people that you're working with. Interestingly, there's research by psychologist Dr. Alicia A. Grandi. She's from Penn State University, and she found that women experience menopause. They seem less likely, look like a leader, unless they actually talk about menopause openly, which was, it's interesting, isn't it? And so the research found that by being open about your menopause symptoms, you're neutralizing it and you're normalizing it without embarrassment and shame. So it may not be as risky as you think. So I really encourage people to start sharing with people that you trust.
Absolutely. I am seeing more of a trend towards this. My patients are often telling me that they are talking with their friends, they're talking with their coworkers about their menopause symptoms. The problem is they're still very afraid to disclose it to their managers because, I have one patient who was so fearful of being discovered. She'd need these little power naps in the middle of her day. She'd close all her curtains at work and just lock her door and pray that nobody knocked on the door for 5 minutes because she had such terrible brain fog that she couldn't get through the rest of her day at the top of her game. Maybe she hadn't slept at all the night before, and she was terrified of being found out. And it's really unfair. So we do have to start being more open about it. It is just a phase of life. And as you mentioned, Janet, there are treatments available. Talking to your friends can often lead you to the path of the right kind of help and support. And this is a great transition into our third section, which is menopause in the workplace, the specific impact on the workplace that women are experiencing, both, what they're experiencing while they're in the workforce and maybe what's driving them out of the workforce during this crucial time in their lives. So we decided to actually focus this webinar largely around the workplace aspects of menopause because this is the time when women are most likely to be in a leadership role. Age 45 to 55, not only are we taking on more leadership and more challenging roles at work, but also we're dealing with a lot of stuff at home. That's not to be discounted. We have a family that's growing. We have aging parents. We're trying to carve out more free time with a partner or with our friends or just for ourselves, for that crucial self-care that we need. And it can be really, really challenging. So we want to really provide you with some information to help you achieve your personal and your professional goals and just thrive during this beautiful transitional time in our lives. And let's take a look at our poll, which is focused on the concern with respect to menopause in your career.
On a scale of 1 to 5, how concerned are you about the impact of menopause on your career? 1 being the least concerned, 5 being the most concerned.
Okay, so this is very much in keeping with what we've been saying. This just shows you the level of concern that women are feeling. Maybe not so much for the three of us because menopause is our career, but for the average working woman out there, it is not the focus of their day in and day out. So it's very telling and interesting that women are concerned about the impact. So Salima, how do you think women can advocate for their needs in the workplace? And how can we drive towards a workplace that embraces women's needs instead of forcing them to hide it?
Yeah. Well, I want to start first by, recognizing it. And, the way it showed up in my coaching practice is I hear things like, oh, I'm feeling anxious about things that never used to make me feel anxious before. I cried at work for the first time. I've never done that. I'm feeling mortified. They're having a lot of self-doubt in roles in doing the work that they've been doing comfortably before. They're having difficulty making decisions. They're taking longer to make decisions. Moments that are career highlights that should be celebrated feel like they're disasters, or they're forgetting things in the middle of important meetings or even forgetting about important meetings. And so it just recognizing and understanding how it might show up and impact you in the workplace is, I think, really important to understand. And then that's where you start to see people holding back from career enhancing roles, or they're confused if what they're experiencing is actually burnout, menopause, or both. Or that's when we talked about earlier that 10% are leaving the workforce altogether because of their menopause symptoms not being managed. So first part of advocating for ourselves is to really kind of understand what is it that we're actually going through and experiencing. And then I like to say, come back to the word konenki, which means renewal of energy, a renewal of years and energy in the Japanese language, and use that as a beautiful place to ground ourselves and to reclaim that power. And ask my clients to find the ways that they find the places where they feel comfortable to start sharing, and then have some phrases prepared and ready so that you are able to share it in the moment. So, for example, some statements can include, hey, I'm going through menopause. I keep forgetting things, so I may ask you to repeat or remind me of things. And when I do, it's not because I'm not engaged, it's not because I'm not paying attention, it's just the stage I'm at. Or it could be saying something is simply like, hey guys, I'm having a menopause moment. I need a short break. Or there was actually a podcast I was listening to with Geneva Patterson. She's a senior faculty member at the Center for Creative Leadership. And she shared how she discussed it at work with her boss, who is a male. And I really liked how she said it. She said, I just want to let you know that in the event I pull out my tissues during a hot flash, I'll be right here. I'm focused on our conversation. If it's distracting, let me know. And in the event I do need a break, I will let you know, and I'll come back as focused as ever. So having your statement of how you're going to present it or talk about it, I think is a really great place to start, and find the statement that feels really comfortable and empowering for you.
That's great advice. And on a personal level, that is really great. Women do have to start advocating for themselves and speaking up and normalizing their symptoms. And I've certainly had patients who've been, who've had terrible things said to them in their workplace, such as, you can't be having a hot flash in a meeting. It's like as if you can control it. It's not something you can control. So getting ahead of that and explaining what's happening with your body and that this is a normal, natural transition is so key. And Janet, I know that the Menopause Foundation is doing a lot in terms of then educating the workplaces and advocating at the level of the organization to help take some of the pain points out of this for women as individuals. So would you like to speak to some of the resources and advocacy that you've been doing in terms of at the organizational level?
Happy to. In addition to our report, which really outlined the challenge that organizations were facing, because the reality is there's 5 million working women over the age of 40 in Canada. We're 1/4 of the workforce, and employers cannot afford to lose our skills and expertise. So we wanted to also provide them with a solution and with tools. And in partnership with Sun Life, we created the Menopause-Inclusive Workplace Playbook. It's a very simple, free, downloadable resource for workplaces. It includes a 5-step action plan that they can follow. The first step is really around culture and communication. How do you break the taboo of menopause at work? How do you normalize it? How do you get rid of this stigma? And that is often about opening up the conversation. We believe that workplaces can be an outstanding avenue to close the menopause knowledge gap. Because as Salima said, I was one of those women at the height of my professional career as a senior vice president. I thought I was burnt out. I had never heard of the word perimenopause, did not know that there were all of these symptoms that I could experience. And I actually walked away from a role that I loved because I thought I needed to take care of my health. If I had that knowledge gap closed, I likely would have gone on some form of treatment a lot earlier, and my trajectory would have been different. That's what we're hoping to achieve for women in the workplace. It's also really important to understand that many women do not want to walk around with a big M on their shirt and say, I'm in menopause, I'm having all of these symptoms. And women's experiences are very unique and varied. As they go through the transition, some having many symptoms, others having very few. What we're trying to do is create the opportunity for openness from the top down. Organizations need to step up. We support people through other phases of life, mental health, pregnancy, all of these things. This is another phase of life. And if organizations are committed to being age and gender inclusive, they have to look at menopause. And our experience with our campaign, which we launched, which is called Menopause Works Here, where organizations can sign up and demonstrate that they're committed to being menopause inclusive, is that many companies are saying, we understand, we never thought of this. We see this as an opportunity, and they are breaking the taboo and cracking open the conversation. And I think that's really critical. Women themselves, you're welcome to, go to our website, menopausefoundationcanada.ca. The resources are there. You can share them with your employer. But many women, as Salima said, feel alone during this time. They are embarrassed. Menopause in the workplace is often silent. You do not want to reveal your symptoms because there is fear and there is that stigma. So we're making a change. It is happening. Our generation, Gen X, as I like to say, is the last generation of women to be in the dark about menopause. And the workplace is going to be an incredible platform to have the discussion, to close the knowledge gap, and to empower women in the prime of their life.
That's fantastic advice. Yes. And we are definitely going to be providing some links to the resources provided by the Menopause Foundation along with this webinar and in our chat. I just want to thank you both so much for being here, for providing your expertise. And I want to make sure we have some time to answer questions. I would just draw your attention if you do want to know more about things like natural food products or diet or exercise. Certainly look at some of the podcasts that we've done through Eat, Move, Think. We do provide a lot of that information with respect to, for example, soy products, the right type of exercise to do. And I have tons and tons of podcasts where I've gone into a lot of detail about the specifics of hormone therapy. One question I see I'm getting a lot is, if I don't have any symptoms, should I still consider menopause hormone therapy as a preventive? I would say we're not there yet. We don't have a lot of good evidence in terms of the use of menopause hormone therapy purely for prevention. Maybe we'll get there. I'm not doubting that we will. But what I will say is 80% of women do experience symptoms as they go through the menopause transition. 20% are genetically blessed, and they have estrogen receptors that seem to coast through menopause without even noticing it really. And so the way I look at it is that those 20% of women are unlikely to benefit from the use of menopause hormone therapy because their receptors are quite adaptive and are adjusting well to the decline in hormone levels. For the rest of us, it is important to seek out a certified menopause provider. And that is another question I'm getting. How do I know I'm seeing the right provider? So that's a great question. And I often point patients towards the Menopause Society, formerly known as the North American Menopause Society. They do have a Find a Provider feature where they list all of the certified menopause practitioners by area, by city, so that you can find a certified practitioner and make sure you're getting the correct advice. Another question I'm seeing is, I'm 60 and I'm being told I have to come off my menopause hormone therapy. This is not true. This is not true, and you should definitely seek another opinion on that. We say that as long as you are starting menopause hormone therapy in what we call the window of opportunity, which is either within 10 years of your final menstrual period, or if that is not clearly established, then age 60, then you may continue on hormone therapy for as long as for you, the benefits continue to outweigh the risks. There is no hard, firm stop time. And in fact, brand new evidence has come out, brand new research has come out looking at over 10 million women over the age of 65 who were started on hormone therapy during the window of opportunity and who continued it beyond age 65. And they continued to have a significantly decreased rate of all-cause mortality when they stayed on the correct form of hormone replacement. So that is a really important thing. Another quick one I can address is I have a Mirena, so an IUD that often causes you to stop having periods. So how do I know if I'm in menopause? That is a great question. If you suspect you're in menopause because you're having symptoms such as hot flashes, disrupted sleep, mood changes, etc., you can absolutely, in that case, ask for a blood test. There is something called an FSH level, which can tell you, even if you are on a Mirena, whether you are actually in menopause or not. And this can be quite helpful. But the point is, we're not really treating the menopause itself. We're treating your symptoms. So I will often prescribe a topical estrogen in addition to the Mirena IUD. This is a fantastic combination to help you during perimenopause. That's just some quick hits here that I'm getting off of the Q&A section. And I want to thank everybody for all of your questions. And again, please go to some of the podcasts that are out there. Go to the Menopause Foundation's website. Go to the Menopause Society. And you can explore many more resources on your own. A few people are asking for book recommendations, and I think all of us can probably speak to this. So, Janet, what would be your number one book recommendation for someone looking to learn more about the menopause transition from an evidence-based perspective?
There's a number of good ones out there right now, but I would say Dr. Jen Gunter's The Menopause Manifesto would be a great place to start.
Fantastic. Dr. Jen Gunter is fantastic, and she's it's strictly evidence-based. If you want to get the very, very best information, go to Jen Gunter. That's a great one. What about you, Salima?
There's a book called The Menopause Brain by Lisa Mosconi. She's a neuroscientist and a brain scientist. And it's really interesting to learn and understand how your brain is changing and responding to the shifts in your hormone levels. So I like to recommend that one. And she also has a TED Talk as well, which is really great.
Fantastic. And I'm going to recommend Estrogen Matters by Dr. Avram Blooming. Dr. Blooming, a very interesting story. His wife had breast cancer. He himself is an oncologist who has treated women over the decades with breast cancer. And he's working very, very hard to take a closer look at the link between breast cancer and hormone replacement therapy. And hopefully the work that he's doing will help us in the future to be able to offer more hormonal options to women who have a history of breast cancer. And I think that the work he's doing is really intriguing. And in this book, he looks at some of the background information and some of the historical context of the Women's Health Initiative and even what came before it and what's come since that time. So it's a very interesting read and very important, because one thing I want everyone to remember is even among women who have breast cancer, they're still more likely to die from things like heart disease or from a hip fracture. What we're learning and what we're understanding about women's health is changing every day. And it's really important to stay on top of the changing information, because things that we weren't able to offer 10 years ago, we're certainly able to offer today. And I think that that's really encouraging for many women who have suffered for far too long.
I really think this is our time as women when you get to this point. And many of us, we really haven't prioritized our health. And this is just a great opportunity to put ourselves first. And on our website, we've got some resources to help you before you visit your healthcare practitioner. Symptom tracker you can download for free. And then there's links, in addition to these books that we've talked about, links to the North American Menopause Society, now called the Menopause Society's non-hormonal position statement, their position statement on menopause hormone therapy, and other documents that really help to educate women. You're in the driver's seat. So this is about you managing your menopause your way. Together, we'll all change the conversation. But you really need to start expecting that you're going to have a really high quality of life, and that there is no need to really struggle through this. There's lots of things that we can do.
I've leveraged some of those materials on your website, Janet, and they have been fantastic. And, looking for a resource and somebody who's certified in this area has also been really helpful for me in my own journey. So I just want to thank you to your organization for the work that you're doing, because it's really great resources that you're offering.
Agree. And you have a fantastic a board of physicians that work with you, a board of experts that work in conjunction with the Menopause Foundation. So you know that all of the information is so well validated and comes with so much experience behind it in helping women through the transition. So we're going to turn to our very last poll, which is a nice bookend to the discussion today, which is now, how knowledgeable do you feel about the menopause phase, now on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least knowledgeable and 5 being the most? All right, so we've improved our score, which is fantastic. This isn't a one and done conversation. We have to keep the ball rolling. We have to keep the conversation going. Please look into some of the resources that we've discussed here today. And I also want to remind you that we do have the Perimenopause Menopause program here at Medcan, which is a multidisciplinary program that includes nutritional advice, exercise related advice, sleep counseling, access to both hormonal and non-hormonal options for treatment. And we're always here to answer your questions, to help you out along the way, help maybe remove the speed bump from this time in our lives so it can be smooth sailing. And so please feel free to reach out to us if you think that the program might be appropriate for you, or again, look to the North American Menopause Society if you need a provider closer to where you live. I want to thank you all so much again for joining us today. It's been such an honor to be able to sit on a panel with Janet and Salima. I really appreciate what you are doing for women out there. It's desperately needed and it's much appreciated. And I want to thank our audience for joining us today. Please feel free to pass this information on, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day. I'm the clinical director of women's health at Medcan. And here at Medcan, we are so happy to offer a perimenopause and menopause program for women. And this is a multidisciplinary, intensive 6-month program that will help you absolutely thrive as you navigate the menopause transition. We provide individualized care that is based on your symptoms and your needs. and we offer both hormonal and non-hormonal options for treatment, in addition to nursing and physician support. We offer nutrition, we offer exercise advice, and we offer pelvic health. Oh, no. No, just splice back what I said about the program.
Just say this a sentence along the lines of, at Medcan, I lead the women's menopause and perimenopause program, and so proud to empower women through this support.
At Medcan, I lead the perimenopause and menopause program, and I'm so proud to be a part of empowering women to live their best life through the menopause transition.
Perfect. Nailed it.
Ta-da!
That's great, Jen. Thank you so much.
No problem.